For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Sashnee Moodley. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me for Suttner's View, a weekly commentary on South Africa's political scene. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
Could you please outline the background to the court decision reinstating the charges of corruption against President Jacob Zuma?
Yes, I think people forget how far back this goes. It's over 10 years when Schabir Shaik was charged with corruption, and when he was charged, Bulelani Ngcuka, the head of the NPA, said there was a prima facie case against Zuma, but he didn't think that they would win. And that was a very strange thing to say, because if you have a prima facie case, you usually do charge. And during the Sheikh case, it became clear, and in the judgment against Sheikh, became clear that Zuma was implicated in the corruption of Sheikh. There were lots of what Sheikh was convicted of, lots of cases of paying Zuma, and there was no legal basis for those payments. And the court found that the reason that he made those payments to Zuma was in order to secure influence and protection in regard to the various aspects of the arms deal and other things. So you had this, I remember feeling a bit upset for Zuma's family because he wasn't charged, but every day on the TV you had his balance sheets displayed there. And I thought, if the guy is not charged, why are they invading his private life in this way? And I think they were not able to make the case against Sheikh without displaying all this evidence about Zuma. Anyway, after the conviction of Sheikh, it was around 2005, 2006, Mbeki dismissed Zuma as deputy president, although there's controversy over whether he offered to resign and all that sort of thing. But anyway, he was no longer a deputy president because he was implicated in this. And a lot of people in the ANC were very unhappy. They saw this as a setup to try and avoid Zuma becoming president, because there were a lot of conspiracy ideas around Mbeki. They may have been true, they may not have been true. Anyway, shortly after that, Zuma was charged with rape and he was acquitted. Very, very controversial case. And then they took a decision in the National Prosecuting Authority to charge Zuma with corruption. At first, this it took a long time with the case being thrown out by one court, reinstated by another, and then eventually the Supreme Court of Appeal saying that the reasons which Nicholson, amongst others, had used for throwing out the case were not valid. And they were reinstated, and he was charged, and it was around the time of the Polokwane conference, and then Zuma got elected in place of Mbeki as ANC president, and he was due to become state president in 2009, and the Zuma defense team were making representations to the acting head of the prosecution, National Prosecuting Authority, Mokotedi Mche. And the basis of the representations were that Bulelani Ngcuka had been in conversations, taped conversations, with Leonard McCarthy, who was head of the Scorpions, and they were discussing whether Zuma should be charged before Polokwane or after Polokwane. I think they were trying to have a decision that didn't have negative political effects for Mbeki. It's not clear, maybe it wasn't with that intention. Anyway, the prosecuting team, it appears from this judgment that's just been handed down in North Gauteng court, prosecuting authorities said, sure, this is very, very wrong that McCarthy got into this conversation with Ngcuka, and but nevertheless, the case against Zuma remains solid. We must go ahead with the prosecution. Anyway, it appears that there were other things that happened with conversations that Mshe had, and he made an announcement, I think on April the 1st or some such date, withdrawing the charges, saying that these taped conversations, incidentally, it may have been illegal to hand intelligence taping to the defense team of Zuma, but nevertheless he did get that. We must remember Zuma has got an intelligence background. So they handed he says what was on these tapes is an affront to his sense of justice and the impartiality of the prosecuting team. He is therefore withdrawing the case, and he cited some British case and Hong Kong case in support of what he did. Now, the prosecuting team were very angry about this because they hadn't been consulted. Secondly, their understanding was that if there were irregularities in the process, deciding when to charge Zuma, that was for a court to decide, not for them to decide themselves. Anyway, that was in 2009, and there have been various attempts to have the case reinstated, the DA in particular bringing those cases, and in the course of doing this, requesting to have the access to the spy tapes. That was refused, and it went all the way up to the Supreme Court of Appeal, and when it got there, the Supreme Court of Appeal said, some judge asked Kemp, the advocate for Zuma, have you really got a basis for withholding this? And he says, no, we don't have a basis. So they were really wasting the time of the court and actually our money as taxpayers going all the way there. So they got the tapes, and then they brought this action, the DA, to have the case reinstated. So that is taking you up to the moment of the case being heard a week or two back.
What is the status of the charges confronting Jacob Zuma after the High Court judgment, and how do you see this unfolding?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I think that the DA didn't expect a judgment that would go as far as this one. I think the DA expected it to be referred back to the NPA. I think that was what they were calling for. I may be wrong, but I think they were calling for it to be referred back to the NPA to revisit the matter. But what the court did is they found the decision of Mche to have been irrational. That is, he didn't apply his mind to the matter in good faith, in a correct way, when he took the decision to withdraw the charges, and consequently they declared invalid. And they also found that Mche had acted improperly, and he succumbed to pressure because some of the evidence seems to be that the then Minister of Justice put pressure on him, and that he gave about three different explanations. First, that the decision was the decision of the whole prosecuting team, that was of him alone, and some other explanation. So it was contradictory, But in fact, he took the decision on his own against the wishes and against the evidence and the legal opinion. Because not only were there internal prosecutors, but there were outside people like Wim Trengove who were on the team, and they were opposed to dropping it. So the question then becomes, what is the effect of this judgment? It's very damning of the ethics of Mche. But what is the status of the charges? Now, there are two views. One is that the president is automatically an accused, because when you reinstate something, when you declare a decision invalid, you go to what was the position before that, and the position before that was that he faced 783 charges, so that those charges are in place. But in practice, that does not appear to be immediately the case, because it's possible that they could appeal the judgment. I don't know that they will appeal the judgment, because they've already irritated the Supreme Court of Appeal over the spy tapes, and it doesn't seem that this judgment is likely to be set aside. It's a judgment not of one judge, but of the full bench, 3 judges of the High Court. So what may happen is they could appeal, but in my view, if it ever goes as far as the Constitutional Court, it will come back to the NPA to prosecute. Now, the Constitutional Court or the Supreme Court of Appeal may if there's a refusal to allow an appeal at the level of the North Gauteng Court, they may uphold that there's no chance of success. But let's say it goes there, it'll still come back. But it may be that the NPA will now look at the matter, and they can only decide not to prosecute if they have a reason other than that given by Mche. In other words, if they say, looking at this evidence again, there's new factors or something like that. But it doesn't seem that there are new factors, because all of the charges relate to the type of things that were in the Sheikh trial. So my guess is that it's quite likely that Zuma will be charged, and it could be that because of the public interest in the matter, that the courts would hear it quicker than usual, as they did with the Nkandla case. So in the normal course of events in another country, the head of state would step down while facing charges like that, and it may well be that the ANC will put pressure on him, because, especially if they lose votes in the August elections. So as I see it, de jure, in law, the president is an accused, but practically that's not yet the case till an indictment is served on him, and I don't see how they can get out of that.
Thanks for speaking with us, Professor.
Thank you.
That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about the corruption case against President Zuma.